Hello my friends! Today we will take a look at Panasonic GX9. GX9 is a rangefinder style camera with micro four thirds sensor mainly intended for street and travel photography, although it can do much more than that, as I will show you in this video. To test it properly, I took the GX9 on my trip to Sardinia and Corsica. That has proved to be the perfect environment for testing such camera, as there was no shortage of blue color, beautiful landscapes, and towns with proper Mediterranean vibe. Rather than replacing GX8, GX9 is more of a successor to the GX80 or GX85, but it brings together features of both, so it kind of merges both styles of cameras. As I have said, it is a classic rangefinder with a viewfinder placed in the top left corner. With this type of camera, the user experience is, in my opinion, just as important as the output, and I have to say that the GX9 delivers both. GX9 uses the same 20 megapixel micro four thirds sensor with no low pass filter as the G9, and just like in the G9, the sensor performs very well. I am particularly impressed by the dynamic range, or the capability to capture detail in both highlights and shadows. That gives you a lot of flexibility in post, so we have a lot of options for creative work and applying the desired look. Sensor is matched with Panasonic's new processing and color science, and here again, I do like the color reproduction in both RAWs and JPEGs, so it provides a good starting point for editing RAWs or publishing unedited JPEGs. ISO performance is also similar to the G9, so ISO 3200 is fine to use. Above 3200 it depends on the scene. In low dynamic range scenes you can go to 6400 or higher if you know what you're doing. GX9 does have in-body image stabilization though, and even though it is rated for 4 stops, I found it to be more effective than Sony's 5-stop in-body image stabilization. In low light conditions, I rarely had to use ISO above 800, and if you use it together with stabilized lens like 12 to 60mm Leica or Lumix, the resulting effect is really great. It can even smooth out walking on uneven surfaces really well. The build quality of the GX9 is great, I have no complaints in that regard. The materials are high quality, it feels dense and well built. I also like the simplistic look of the GX9, it looks kind of vintage, which is also important with this type of camera. GX9 is a small camera, but not too small. There are smaller cameras in the category, but the GX9 leaves enough space for controls, comfortable handling, and in-body image stabilization, so I don't mind that it is not necessarily as small as possible. Especially if you pair it with small lens, like Panasonic 20mm f1.7 Mark II, it is really compact setup. At the moment, you can actually get 20mm f1.7 and leather half case for free with the GX9 here in Czech Republic and Slovakia, so European viewers can take advantage of that as well. I will leave a link to that in the description. GX9 has 2 exposure dials and also exposure compensation dial, which is very useful on camera of this type, and it also works in manual mode with auto ISO. There is also a switch for focusing mode, button for switching between the viewfinder and the screen, and AF/AE lock button that can be used for back button focusing. Rest of the buttons is positioned around 4-way pad, and these buttons give you quick access to most important settings like ISO, white balance, focus area mode, and these also act like shortcuts for using touch interface. That is definitely another strength of this camera. GX9 has great quick menu where you can access everything that you might need to set on the go, so you won't have to go into main menu much after the initial setup, but when you do so, it won't be an unpleasant experience because the menu is well organized, just like in G9 or GH5, and you can also create My Menu tab, so the whole user interface gets big thumbs up from me. GX9 also has built-in flash, which is quite rare nowadays, and it can be tilted upwards to bound the light of the ceiling. The screen on the GX9 is 3-inch 1.24mm dot screen. It is very sharp, very bright, and the touchscreen functionality is great. It works just like on modern smartphone, so I have no complaints at all. Display is tiltable. Some of the users would prefer rotating screen like on the GX8, but personally, For this type of camera, I prefer tilting screen because it always stays in the center. It also keeps the footprint of the camera smaller while shooting at low angles, and it requires less space. The viewfinder uses 2.7 million dot sequential field panel with 0.7 times magnification. It is one of the smaller viewfinders, but for this type of camera it is okay. The resolution and brightness is also sufficient. Field sequential panel sometimes causes rainbow effect if you are moving the camera a lot, but in the real world use I haven't found that to be a problem with this type of camera. In the G9 for example it would be a problem, but here the viewfinder is completely fine to use for composing. Very nice feature is that it can also be tilted for low light shooting or for shooting upwards, which is very convenient for street photography. GX9 uses 49-point autofocus system, so it is not the fancy 225-point system from the G9 or the GH5, but overall I had no problems whatsoever with the system while taking stills. It is very fast, the autofocus acquisition is basically instant, so it is also very accurate, and since it uses DFD technology, there is no noticeable hunting either. Even in the low light, both accuracy and speed are more than sufficient for intended purposes. I also like that Panasonic gives you a lot of options for setting autofocus area, including smart face detection setting. I have mostly used the GX9 with 3 lenses. 12 to 60mm Leica f2.8-4, 8 to 18mm Leica f2.8-4, and 20mm f1.7 Mark II Pancake Lens. Out of these lenses, I have enjoyed shooting with 20mm Pancake the most. This is really great combination. I like 40mm full frame equivalent field of view. It is great for street photography, very light, very small, optically it is a great lens, and it is kind of how the GX9 was meant to be used. As I've said, you can also get it for free with the GX9. 50mm f1.7 will also be a good match, but I will test that one later on. Using it with zoom lenses is also fine. Kit with 12 to 60mm f3.5 to 5.6 Lumix lens is also available, and it is still my most favorite non-premium kit lens. It is small, sharp, stabilized and very versatile, so in my opinion it is more than worth the price if you get it in the kit with the GX9. Leica 12 to 60 produces nicer images overall, it has really beautiful optical character, so I also like to use it a lot on the GX9 in combination with that sensor. The handling is still okay with 12 to 60 Leica, it doesn't feel out of balance or anything like that. It is basically the same with 8 to 18, that is optically great lens as well. It is fairly small with great build quality, and it is especially useful for video on the GX9 because that ultra wide angle compensates for the crop in 4K. Of course, it is a great lens for stills as well, with very nice character. It is not stabilized, but at those focal lengths, the in-body image stabilization is effective enough. GX9 is not meant to be a video camera in the first place. There is no mic input, but it still shoots very nice 4K video up to 30 frames per second, although there is a crop in 4K and some amount of rolling shutter. It is by no means as bad as with Canon cameras though. 4K is all around usable on the GX9, the video quality is great, even the autofocus is decent, although it is quite slow in 4K, so it could be a good B camera for GH5 or the G9. It can also shoot 1080p with no crop up to 60 frames per second, and the image quality of 1080p video is also very good. GX9 uses rather small BLG10E battery. The battery life is decent for the size. It is rated for 260 shots. I have definitely taken more than that on full charge, but I still recommend getting at least 1 or 2 spare batteries for convenience. GX9 does support USB charging, so you can also charge the batteries in camera on the go using a power bank. Functions like panorama, 4K photo, post focus, time-lapse, creative filters, up to 7-step bracketing and so on are available as well. Even though the GX9 is not primarily meant for fast shooting, it can still shoot respectable 9 frames per second with autofocus single and 6 frames per second with autofocus continuous. Connectivity is also important on a camera such as the GX9, and overall it works well. It supports the usual stuff like transferring images using the Wi-Fi, remote control, and also GPS geotagging using low energy Bluetooth connection, which is very convenient while traveling. The price of the GX9 is currently similar to the G85 or G80, so which one of those should you get? That basically depends on what and how you intend to shoot. GX9 is a great camera for street photography, traveling, social media content creation, and so on, whereas the G80 or G85 is great entry-level all-round camera with great handling, larger grip, weather sealing, rotatable screen, and so on. GX9 has better output because of the new 20 megapixel sensor and processing, but the 16 megapixel sensor in G85 is also sufficient. G85 also has smaller crop in 4K and mic input, so it is more suitable for video. So which one should you get really depends on your preferences. What I like the most about the GX9 is the combination of classic rangefinder style, compact size, 20 megapixel sensor with in-body image stabilization, and great usability. It has some of that Leica rangefinder feel, especially if you use it with small prime lenses. Negatives are the battery life, which is not terrible, but it could be better, external charger is not included, and a bigger OLED viewfinder would be nice. Overall, I have enjoyed my time with the GX9 on Sardinia. It is fun to use, I like the picture that it produces, and I have actually decided to get my own GX9 to use it along the G9 and A7 Mark III for traveling and street photography, so obviously I do recommend it. So that's it for this video, thank you for watching. I hope that you have liked this video and that you have found it to be useful. Stay tuned for more videos and maybe consider subscribing if you don't want to miss my future content. I appreciate your feedback in form of thumbs up or thumbs down. If you would like to ask anything or share your opinion, please do so in the comment section, and see you next time.